Okay, welcome to Leon's Library, a daily talk show at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A live talk show here on YouTube that's dedicated to exposing and remedying corruption in government generally, and also we're focused on parental rights and corruption in particular that's occurring in our divorce and family courts. I'm Leon Kozio, director of the Parenting Rights Institute, and recently I formed the nonprofit organization known as the Citizen Commission Against Corruption. Its purpose is broader in scope and one that's been granted 501c3 status by the IRS. So we are a tax-exempt nonprofit organization, and you can find us online. And it is the CCAS that is sponsoring this program. I am the president of CCAS, and we intend to help people with their individual matters with the hope that we can form a nationwide united movement to get reform in these courts. We are going to have open talk today. We will take comments from anyone or anything you want to offer. Keep in mind that this program is then recreated on the YouTube channel. So those who have missed it will be able to see it for a long period of time. We'll keep these videos up for days, perhaps weeks. So if you miss one of our programs, you can always get it again on our YouTube channel at any time. We are victims of a government that continues to abuse its citizenry and lost track of the purpose, their purpose as public servants. It's a matter that I recently had occasion to address in front of the New York Governor Kathy Hochul's commission, Blue Ribbon Commission, on the study of custody forensic evaluations. And it is clear to me that government is becoming more removed from the people that they serve. And perhaps this is never more evident in our divorce and family courts, but it's just not being covered by mainstream media. So in any event, I want to talk about some ground rules, basically, for those who want to present their concerns. We're obviously not going to tolerate vulgar language, anything having to do with sex, racist remarks. We're all adults here. I don't think I have to, convey that to you. Yesterday's program was very, very well done. A couple of great speakers. By speakers, I mean people who called in. And you will see on my right, your left, the call-in number, area code 315-796-4000. Again, 315-796-4000. So shortly, in just a few minutes after I complete my monologue, anyone who wants to call in, please do so. Tomorrow, we will feature an attorney in Florida who has an ordeal that she would like to share with you. And she's also dealing with human rights violations and her efforts to correct it on an international scale. The United Nations, the international courts, something that you might be interested in. We will have an open mic so that you can ask her questions as well. We hope to have some very fascinating guests next week. A university professor, medical doctor, and a lawyer in Philadelphia are some of the ones I have in mind. A couple have already confirmed. This Friday, I'm going to do something I think is quite as exciting, and that is to address the Parent March on Washington, the 3-day event that we sponsored 2 years ago, May 1, 2, and 3 of 2019. Well attended by parents, advocates, group leaders from around the country. And we're going to play some video sketches that were the video that was done by this attorney in Philadelphia who founded a fascinating event and did a very nice video of it. And we will comment about some of the events. And for those who participated and those who made presentations on the Capitol lawn, for example, we also had expert speakers at the Congressional Ballroom, the march itself down Pennsylvania Avenue under police escort. So that's something I think is going to be very exciting for Friday. That's this Friday, November 12th. So tune in for those events. And again, we will feature Attorney Barbara Stone from Florida tomorrow, 7:30. At this point, I would like to, there have been a lot of compliments already on this program, people who think it's long overdue. Please feel free to subscribe. We need to show that we are a force. Parents have no special interest union or any kind of group that's looking out for their interests in Congress or our state legislatures. Typically, some group might get together briefly, and then after a certain issue is addressed, then they disappear. We see that with groups around the country, people who get very motivated early. I've addressed them, worked with them. They put up a website, and it's sort of a one and done. I've been at this for over 10 years. I started addressing corruption as an attorney, civil rights attorney. I practiced over 23 years in federal and state courts. And then I took a stand against my profession, a conscientious stand, given the harm that's occurring to children. And it's a silent epidemic. And so our aim here is to get people talking. Let's have a discussion on this, an informal one. This is not one, despite what may appear in the background or my attire. I like to be professional in my work, and I consider, out of respect for the viewers here and anyone who wants to participate, speakers and so forth, this is my way of showing that respect, as I did in front of Governor Hochul's commission, the hearings that were held in September of this year. And that commission is going to be coming to a close very soon. So I think it's important that we weigh in, even if it's just sending a letter and so forth. So the testimony that was given, mine inclusive, and others that have already been on this program, have been submitted. But the question remains whether that commission is going to be like the Moreland Commission on Public Corruption, which Governor Cuomo created in 2013. I testified there, and he prematurely closed that commission because top leaders of our legislature, the New York legislature, were being implicated. And eventually a federal prosecutor got incensed by that political maneuver. He seized the files and ended up convicting the top leaders of our legislature and a top Cuomo aide. So goes to show you that there is a lot of corruption that's not being addressed. Our oversight commissions, agencies, they're not doing their job. They're window dressing. It's obvious. And New York has that problem. California has that problem. Massachusetts has that problem. I've been all over the country working with people who are victims of court corruption. And so I come armed with not only a wealth of litigation experience, but political experience. I held public office as a city councilman, and I could go on and on. I'm simply stating this because they have gone out of their way to attack my credibility and discredit my public message. And so far, that hasn't worked as far as my determination goes. And this program, this talk show, Leon's Library, is just one further example of it. So again, you have the call-in number here. I would like to, I received from Judge Larry, he probably should be a judge, Larry DeMarco in Philadelphia. He's the lawyer I referenced earlier, and I hope to have him as a guest sometime down the road as well. And he has his own show, and he's an outstanding attorney down in Philadelphia, joined us and was a guest speaker down in Washington 2 years ago for our 3-day parent march on Washington. And he sent me someone who had left a message for him, commented, and he sent it to me for my information. I'd like to read it here because I'm getting a lot of very favorable comments. I want all of you to know that I thank you from the bottom of my heart for those great, encouraging comments that you're giving me here on my my Facebook and my website, leonkozio.com. But here's one that comes from a gentleman who runs, I guess, his own live YouTube channel. He has many followers, some 50,000 plus views and so forth. And it's called Just Larry. So this particular Larry, he writes on another person's YouTube channel the following when my name was apparently brought up in some discussion that I was unaware of. And so this was sent to me from my FYI, and I'd like to read it to you. And this is what he had to say about my background. He states as follows: I can say from roughly 20 years experience as a former legislator and colleague of Mr. Kozio that he is hands down the best litigator I've ever witnessed. That includes TV and movies. The man is brilliant and principled. This is why the entire state of New York made it their mission to take him down. I literally witnessed senators and even congressmen say it in my presence. He was a threat because he couldn't be bought. I bring this comment to your attention because it illustrates just how vicious it has become, the retributions for those who do take a conscientious stand against the corruption that is occurring in our divorce and family courts. But we are also looking at current events. We are here to address any concern, like, for example, the parents that are being called domestic terrorists now by our Justice Department simply because they want to be more involved in their children's education in our schools. Come on, that's a right that we have. The parenting right has been recognized. Let's get with the program here, folks. In Congress and in legislature and our Board of Education, we have a parenting right. The Supreme Court has declared it time and again as the oldest liberty interest protected by our Constitution. So it is a fundamental right, and they're trampling all over it. And we're going to lose that right if we don't join, as I'm hoping we do here, and take some action. I want to, before I open up the program, I just want to note the book that I had recently published and read an excerpt that I think you will find quite fascinating. Many people who have read this book or learned of this quote, it comes from a New York Supreme Court opinion. It backs up what I've been saying all along about the structure of our divorce and family courts. It is a structure that is based on this custody framework, if you will. The custody framework is outdated. It's been around for decades. It was based on a time frame when moms stayed at home and dads worked. They supported their families financially for the most part, and moms were the caregivers at home. And so was born this custody framework of custody and visitation, custodial parents and non-custodial parents. Congress then weighed in and made it an incentive for moms and dads to fight in these courts by having them fight over the custody award, if you will. And then the other parent is gradually, in so many cases, excluded, as I was, from the children's lives. It's called parental alienation. I call it a human rights violation. But in any event, this book, Whistleblower in Paris, was published in July of this year by Author House. It's available at all the Barnes & Noble stores. Amazon gave it a 5-star rating. You could find it in any major bookseller site. There is so much in here that I encourage you to take a look at. Even if you download it, you can get it online for only a few bucks. Not even, I don't make much money on it. I want that much, I took a big loss on here. It's just one of my many sacrifices. But in the case of Webster versus Ryan, this is a New York judge, a veteran judge in family courts who took issue with the custody framework, as I have all these years, just to show that I'm not alone in this, but that there is a serious problem. Now, this opinion, Webster versus Ryan, came out in 2001. And because this particular judge was close, precipitously close, as I write in my book, to obtaining reform, his decision was quickly overturned on appeal. And here's what Judge Dennis Duggan writes in 2001, and it's now 20 years later. The Matrimonial Commission in 2006 to the New York Chief Justice also came out with a recommendation that we cease from using the custody mandate and the rewards that are given through Title IV funding. And we get away from that. We need to be using parental time and other things that are less incendiary. And of course, the more that parents get along, the more that we have shared parenting, and the bar associations are opposing it all across the country, then there's less fees for lawyers. That's what the bottom line is. But there's more parental involvement. There is a much more parents that are less likely to combat with one another. And we see that going on all the time. So here's what Dennis Duggan writes, again, in 2001, and we haven't seen any change. We haven't seen shared parenting. We haven't seen anything come out of all of these commissions, reports, and professional studies, if you will. So here's what he writes. At the outset, the court notes that the terms custody and visitation have outlived their usefulness. Indeed, their use tends to place any discussion and allocation of family rights into an oppositional framework. Fighting for custody directs the process toward determining winners and losers. The children, always in the middle, usually turn out to be the losers. This court has abandoned use of the word visitation in its custody and its orders, using the phrase parenting time instead. If the word custody did not so permeate our statutes and was not so ingrained into our psyches, that word would be the next to go. This misplaced focus draws parents into contention and conflict, drawing the worst from them at a time when their children need their parents best. And how true that is. And we see it going on today to the point that we have a silent epidemic. We have suicides, child murders. We have the kind of thing that the media and our government is suppressing. We know about it. We, the folks, you listeners and viewers here, we know what's going on, but we're the victims. And like I've stated earlier, we have no a special interest, union or organization, lobby group that's backing our interests. So I'm hoping to formulate one or to get groups together and hopefully have another event in Washington. That'll be the subject of Friday's Leon's Library talk show. I just, in quoting from my book, just a little bit further before we get started, I point out that Judge Duggan, evaded the core problem in his decision, that elephant in the courtroom known as profit motive. Still, he was precipitously close to triggering vital reforms. It was no surprise then that his decision was quickly reversed on appeal, and despite similar condemnations in a 2006 judicial report, the inflammatory depictions of mom and dad have survived. In my own reports, I urged that such terms were more appropriate for prisons and funerals, not a forum known as family court. You have to agree with me, that is very true. And when we come into these courts, they're supposed to be addressing the best interests of our children. Instead, it's become a profit center. And it's getting worse with every passing year. Just in the 10 years that I've been involved in the movement, the 23 years prior to that I was litigating as an attorney, I have seen it get so much worse. And so this concern for our children, which is our true and genuine concern, we know our children. The judges don't know them. They're lawyers in robes. They did the same sort of thing. So that's something that we have to continue to address because it has produced a lot of harm, carnage, if you will, in our families in America today. So if you'd like to call in, you're welcome to do so. There's the call number, 315-796-4000. While we're waiting for any callers who might want to call in, I also want to address Alec Baldwin. He's in the news today. We're going to deal with contemporary issues as well. And Alec Baldwin, he published a book, A Promise to Ourselves. We have a caller, so I'll get to that shortly, but we'll address that in the context of carnage. Hello, go ahead. You're on Leon's Library. Go ahead.
Yes, and hello, go ahead. You're on.
You might want to just get rid of some background noise.
It's Robert Malik, ACScomplaints.com. How are you?
Oh, hi, Robert. How are you? We got that background noise again. So
it's going to be a little. Hold on.
That's another thing that I want to.
Okay. There we go. Okay.
Not a problem. Go ahead, Rob.
All right. Yeah. I want to share with you because I called in yesterday and I asked you about whether or not ACS in New York City exists lawfully, and you weren't sure about that. Encouraged me to look into it, so I did. And apparently, you go back. It's the whole thing with the 25 years at NYC children. According to my research, in 1996, they were brought in by executive order with Mayor Giuliani. Now, these executive orders, in reference to my research, they can only last a maximum of 6 months. So, as far as ACS being formed by, wow, we did an executive order, so guess what? They now exist forever. That's not according to the research that I've done. And when you look into the city council, whether or not they did it, I think they'd have to have 30,000 signatures when I read about what the council has to do in order to legislate this into law. And I doubt whether or not those 30,000 signatures have been obtained and there was ever a vote on ACS actually existing. So I'll be taking federal action on that regarding ACS for a class action lawsuit right from the beginning of actually 6 months after 1996. The amount of damage that they've done here, we could be looking at approximately, they're celebrating 25 years. I think we should celebrate 25 years times all the money they were paid for the past 25 years. What is that, about $100 billion? I think that should be the parent celebration. And you as being an attorney and everyone involved, if in fact what I'm saying is true, let's all work together and let's get that $100 billion. Let's give it to the parents, and let's go after that and use that money. Well, actually, a little bit to those who are involved, such as yourself. I don't think you should be paid nothing. Let's keep some. Let's have a little bit of the money to those that are taking up the fight and spending full time on fighting these people. Something that's just fair and reasonable, and give the rest over to the parents that have suffered on that. So I wanted to bring that up today.
Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you for doing the follow-up as well. I appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners do, and our subscribers as well. The notion of rewarding government instead of parents, we see that going on all the time. And for my part, I have challenged judicial authority. That is to say, when a certain judge is acting excessively or beyond his or her jurisdiction. In my case, in one instance, a judge issued a gag order on my website, and I challenged it in New York Supreme Court, and it was removed. It's a rare event. It was done through New York law, known as an Article 78 proceeding, or also in the forum lawsuits of our past, it was known as a mandamus action. In any event, you can also challenge these things in federal court, as I have done. Unfortunately, in federal court, there's a deference practice. There's so many barriers to obtaining jurisdiction in federal court that, I can state from my own experience, you'll be lucky if you can get any decision on the merits. And if you continue to assert those rights, even in a new factual context, as I did, they will eventually enter an order against you and prevent you even from accessing the courts. So this is why I know that the public has to get together and form their own alliance and get the protection they need. Because ultimately, the judges are going to defer to the state courts. State courts will defer to the legislatures for changes in terms of the laws as they're interpreting them. But in terms of getting accountability, that's a whole different story. And so I'm glad you did your research. Some of the cases that, if you want to bring it to my attention, we have as you can see, the law library behind me. I can pull out these cases, and we could even work together in this very context. So I'm glad you did that. And when you do your lawsuit or whatever, keep us abreast of those things. I can't give legal advice or be involved. I'm not representing anybody here. That's not the purpose. But I like your comment about getting these monies to the parents, to the children, instead of the lawyers. I mean, when you look at Title IV defunding, it's based on the number and size of support orders that are issued. Translated, that means the more that these judges issue custodial parents, create custodial parents, if you will. It's a statutory creation. The more that they can create these sorts of creatures of state law, the more money they get. It's become almost it is a formula, but it's almost become just routine. Their performance as judges is measured by the amount of money they bring in so many cases. And the lawyers themselves benefit through these fee structure that's really gotten out of control. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we're going to have a guest next week who spent over $2 million in fees in a divorce case that never even involved an issue involving children. So if you have the money, they will take it. I know that one of the people who addressed our audience in Washington at the Congressional Ballroom, I had made the point that these forensic evaluations, which our Governor's Blue Ribbon Commission is now going to issue a report on, that these forensic evaluations can cost as much as $50,000. And I stated that that was probably a high figure for most, families, moms and dads who are forced to go through these evaluations, often on the slightest accusation of a scorned spouse. And he approached me later and he stated that he spent, that I was not a high ball figure. He indicated he had spent $250,000 just on evaluations. Again, if you've got the money, they'll get it. They have no problem bankrupting you and putting you in jail if you don't pay not only support, but the lawyer fees and everything that is tacked on. So go ahead, Rob. You were going to make a comment?
18B does provide forensic evaluations are free of charge. However, the issue with the 18B forensic evaluation is that those forensic evaluators out of the 18B panel, they are put there by the appellate court, and the judge and all lawyers involved with that case rate that forensic evaluator back to the appellate court as far as whether or not they like that forensic evaluator. So my point to the 18B forensic evaluators that I've called, I said to them, how is it impartial as a pro se if I can't rate you, but everyone else is rating you? They're against me. I can't rate you to the appellate court. So if you go on my side, you will guarantee lose. You'll have the judge, you'll have the attorney for the child, you'll have ACS, you'll have the mother's lawyer. There will be 4 bad reports against you if you go with the pro se, and they will report that back to the appellate court. Any free 18B forensic evaluator, and if you're a pro se, if you take that, you're going to have a 4-on-1 ding on that forensic evaluator's report to the appellate court that's going to work against you to have an honest evaluation. Either you're paying out of your pocket massive amounts of money, or they have another way with which to take you down. It's really disastrous.
It is, and again, I go back to the structure of our divorce and family court system throughout the country. It's the same. There are some minor deviations here and there between the states, but the bottom line again is these judges in New York, in my case, the state Supreme Court judge, which is the general jurisdiction judge in New York, we're the only state that has that. Our high court is called the Court of Appeals, but without getting into that. Even our bar association, New York Bar, issued a report condemning the 11 trial court structure here in this state. The conflicts over jurisdiction in that regard is very lucrative for lawyers, which then surprised me that the Bar Association demanded reform through a constitutional convention, which never did happen. Again, this was a few years ago. California, the largest state, twice the size of New York, has 1 trial court. They have their divisions, but they appear to be much more organized. But the corruption itself, as Alec Baldwin pointed out in his book some 12 years ago, is highly incendiary, very dysfunctional. New York has been, many studies have been done, independent studies calling New York's system dysfunctional, their legislature and so forth. So we are the victims. And when we go into these courts, we should be focused on mediation, resolution, settlement. Keep the lawyers out of this. The lawyers are no good. They, in terms of they're trained to gladiate. Okay, we have an adversarial system, right? And we have structurally. Let's face it, we have an adversarial system. I know that from all the years I practiced. Okay, that may be appropriate. Personal injury cases, criminal cases, the vast category of litigation that we see today, but not family court. Not when children are involved. And parents who are going through hellish ordeals, fighting for their children. I mean, isn't this the kind of thing that we saw in the in Caesar's Rome in the Colosseum? Isn't this a Roman Colosseum sort of thing? Let's put the child in the middle of the Colosseum and let's get the parents fighting over the child. I mean, it's barbaric.
Good point. Good analogy.
And I've made those, and I think this is what has really caused a lot of retribution and anger. I mean, I could tell you stories. There are gonna be a lot of stories on this program. Stay tuned.
Yeah,
You're gonna have
a lot of days talking about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we will. And there are so many out there, and they're just waiting and chomping at the bit. I know so many people out there with stories to tell, and we need to do this and then document it. Like I say, these programs will then appear on my YouTube channel the following day. Actually, shortly after this program, this one should appear. And we'll catalog these programs so you can pick and choose the ones you want to see that you may have missed. But the live is so much better because you can guide the issues. You can input, things that need to be heard. And then I can respond to it. Others can respond. Tomorrow we'll have a Florida attorney. You can ask her questions and what she's been through. She's retired, but she's got quite a background as well. We'll have hopefully soon a Philadelphia lawyer. He'll talk about what he's been through. And his, not only the videos that he does, the documentaries that he produces as well. Quite a dynamic figure. So we'll, again, continue to have these guest speakers. Roughly 3 days a week, we'll do live talk. 2 days a week, we'll feature someone, an expert contributor of some kind, or maybe just a shocking story that I think you need to hear. Stephen Boyd, as I mentioned yesterday, head of the Gabriella Boyd Foundation. He lost his 2-year-old girl to a mom that refused to give up the child to a custody change order. And she murdered that 2-year-old child. And she's now doing a life term. She even went after the police who tried to arrest her with a knife, tried to kill them. She was charged with attempted homicide on the police that arrived. And so Steve has had this foundation. I was a guest speaker, a keynote speaker at the foundation gala. That is the annual event that they sponsor and raise great funds for the protection of children. We're not just talking about abuse. We're talking murder. We're talking suicide, even as they get older. You're not going to get the child back. I mean, I was alienated from my children, but they're in college, okay? I can't imagine what Steve and others across the country are going through when they lose their child. And we have so many of those cases in New York. And we'll get to some of those, okay? The news stories that surround that. And on that note of carnage, and anyone, again, if you want to call in, there's your call-in number. You have something you want to offer, a comment you want to make, we'd be glad to respond to it. But we may have forgotten this. Alec Baldwin, A Promise to Ourselves. This is a book that he published in 2008. I went to his book signing. His signature is here on this in this book. And but I thought many people had forgotten. And I know he's in the news again with the death of that person on his production set. And so and he's stayed very active in the acting guild, even though back then he was ready to throw in the towel, thought his career was over with. It's so easy in this context to think it's all done, and you give up, and you should not, because he's one.
No, we can't give up.
No, we can't. And here's what he wrote, and this quote is taken directly from his book, and if ever you get his book or you want it, it's at page 183. And here's what he writes. And this was front page news back in 2008. The media focused more on this than they did what his message was. And that was that we need to reform in the California court system, the New York court system, and the custody problems across the country. He was an advocate of shared parenting and so forth. But here's what he writes after a wicked ordeal that he went through, the publicity over a message he left on his at that time, young daughter's answering machine. And that went public. If they could find something on you, anything that is normally a private family matter, they will make it public. They will bring it out in court. They will do something to embarrass you, humiliate you, discredit you, anything. It's coercion. In many cases, downright extortion. I will tell you eventually about so many judges that either were sent to prison, judges on my own case, custody judges that were permanently banned from the bench for such thing as pedophilia, sexual harassment on their own court clerks. I mentioned some of that yesterday. But here's what Alec Baldwin writes in his book after all of that ordeal he went through. And he writes as follows: my family and closest friends were still there for me, but even some of them, and again, he's going through this wicked divorce with Kim Basinger at the time. My family and closest friends were still there for me, but even some of them had grown perplexed by and weary of the assault on my parental rights that seemed to have no end. On the deepest level, my situation now seemed hopeless to me as well. I had gone to sleep many nights, doubting that I had the desire to face these problems another day. Driving up the Taconic Parkway, heading to an inn in the Berkshire Mountains, I began to think about what little known town I would repair to in order to commit suicide. What semi-remote Massachusetts state park could I hike deep into and shoot myself? What bed and breakfast could I check into and overdose there? On Long Island, I thought about the old Jeep I own and the emissions that gave off. When I returned to New York, the thought of jumping out the window of my apartment was with me every night for weeks. That's Alec Baldwin, 2008, in his book, A Promise to Ourselves. I have written my own book, Whistleblower in Paris, about what happens when you try to escape the long reach of the law in these family courts. there's virtually no escape. You can't run, you can't hide. If they want you, whether you violated a custody order, maybe you upset some judge, and again, there's so many cases to talk about. We don't have the ability to do that here, but that shows you don't allow the despair to overwhelm you, as it did Alec Baldwin 12, 13, 14 years ago. Because he became he became obviously more successful after that event, that suicide discussion, than before. And we see him, imitating Donald Trump. We see him in all these movies today. And now with he's now producing his own movies, as we know with most recent news. So in any event, we're going to do more of these. Rob, what did you think about? Were you familiar with Alec Baldwin and what went on there?
Not exactly, Lee. I know. I'm listening to you, and I'm learning from you on that.
Yeah, we see Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and what they're going through.
Yeah. Yes.
We see these famous people throughout the country going through some wicked divorces. We see, millions and millions of dollars. Dr. Joe Sorge, who headed up Divorce Court, found me online and asked me to do a video documentary, which I did, and you could find that online. And he did like a $4 million production that he featured in theaters around the country, New York City in particular. I was invited down there and to view this this documentary that he did, Divorce Court. And he went through, as he explained it to me, some 8 figures he gave to his ex, and saw that the abuses here were just, astronomical. And it's counterproductive for those who are entrepreneurs, for example. Why work so hard only to give up, an amount that is not in parity with the person who created the product or the patent or what have you? Again, these are people who see
the money went to the children. Can you imagine how much good that would do?
Exactly.
The of what this does, and go to education, college education, et cetera, it could change the children's lives.
Exactly. So how is that in the best interest of the children? And you see the judges, remember, they're lawyers in robes. They did all the same things. But how in the world can, and I have come across some judges in chambers, and I've heard them say, this chaos has to stop. This carnage has to stop. You people have to resolve this thing. And he was directing it really at the lawyers. The clients weren't even in the chambers. They were outside, hoping for the best, sitting on pins and needles and whatever. I tell a story about a gentleman who, was to make a contribution to my cause, the Parenting Rights Institute at the time. And he said he didn't have any money. He lost it all to his divorce case. Like 3 days later, he called me back and he said that he was looking for another lawyer yet again. And he wondered if I had one I could recommend. And he had $10,000 to spend for yet his next lawyer. This is, people get the idea you've got to go get another lawyer, a better lawyer, and they're all doing the same things in these courts. It's not a rocket scientist to figure out what's the best interest of the children. My ex-secretary, who got me into a lot of trouble because outsiders influenced her, how they managed to get to her is still beyond me. I'm still getting reports and information and taking affidavits from people on how she was influenced to work on the inside against me when I made this stand against my profession. But after I discovered the thefts of she emptied out various bank accounts. I'll tell you more about that story. That's in my book as well. But she ended up, after being terminated, she decided she didn't want to be a secretary anymore. She went on to do a divorce practice. Yeah, you're hearing that correctly. With her high school diploma, whatever she had, a 2-year degree in college, I think. She went on to run a divorce practice for years, closing entire cases, as we learned later on. She used my name, another lawyer in my office, other lawyers that she went to work for later, and she used those names when she had to. And ultimately, we called into a judge in a courtroom where she was scheduled to appear and play lawyer. And the judge queried her and discovered, she, caught her in an act. And she finally ended up going to jail on felony charges here in New York in 2016. But it took 6 years to get her. And when I came out with it, I believe personally that they may have given her prosecutorial immunity because they never went after the charges I filed against her. And so therefore, guess what? Fine. we had more victims. We had client victims. We had mom and dad victims. We had traffic court victims. We had law firms that she went to work for later, all became victims. Why? Because they chose to ignore me. They chose to retaliate against my public stand. Fascinating stories, John Grisham type, ordeals, except it's not, a novel. It's not fiction. It's real life. And it's in my book, again, A Whistleblower in Paris. So having received no further input from anyone that wants to call in.
I just have one question, Leon.
Sure. Go ahead, Rob. Go ahead. Sure.
Yeah. What I'd like to ask you is it possible to request a jury in a family court case, an ACS case? Do you know about any case law or anything regarding that?
Well, I can't get to a point with giving you advice or recommendations on your case. I won't. No, I understand that. I'm just
can anybody request a jury in a family court case or an ACS case?
No, Rob, I understand that, but I'm making my own professional determination here. But I will say this, and it's nothing against you. Don't take it the wrong way. But I can't talk about what I went through, okay? And then, I'm my own client. Obviously, that sounds goofy, but, that's a distinction I had to make in front of judges who were coming after me for things I said in court, calling me counselor and counsel. And then I would have to come back and say, wait a minute, you are the ones who are saying that I'm a litigant and not a lawyer in this capacity. Now you're flipping it and trying to use anything I do against me as a lawyer. So that's another story. Again, that's in my book as well. But what I did in these contexts is I didn't demand a jury trial, okay, because I knew that there is no jury right in family court. In divorce court, there used to be a jury right for grounds, but we don't have that mandate anymore. We're going to have a guest speaker, a retired professor at St. John's University, who did have a jury trial in his divorce case on grounds. And when you hear what he spent, it'll shock you. And then afterwards, there was a equitable distribution over assets, a fight over assets, and another $2 million went out. I have a friend of mine actually up in the Lake George region, has the highest costly divorce case in Warren County history. And he spent some $2 million or more, so again, if you've got the money, they will take it, and there will be no crying about it. There will be no shame. There will be no sense of a moral fiber issue here. In any event, as far as
how could someone buy your book, Leon?
It's online, as I indicated.
Is it Amazon or?
You can get it on. Yeah, you get it on Amazon. You can get it on any Barnes and Noble store. Author House is the publisher, and you can always look up Author House. My royalties are larger from them than they are from the other ones, the big guys. But almost any bookseller site will have it, and a lot of people have bought the book. And by the way, there's a few people that are litigants, pro se litigants. You were talking about them earlier. And what they did is, when they discovered my book and how it exposed the corruption in these courts, they went and bought a number of those copies, and they walked them into the chambers of their judges, and said, I'm not going to be, in one case, the gentleman said, I'm not going to be producing any evidence because I can't, because it's just me. I witnessed it. And you say that's not enough. I have to get witnesses that are not available. And so here's the book. This is my case. And it shocked the judge. And I'm understanding from reports that the judge has been reading the book. Others that gave it to their lawyers, this puts the lawyer on notice that they are being, monitored, scrutinized, if you will. So again, this is a weapon, this book. This is not small change. I did it to help you victimized parents. And so it's something that my hope is, again, there's just so much that we will present in this Leon's Library Talk program that will shock you, will inform you, educate you, and so forth. And we do lawyer referrals. The Citizen Commission Against Corruption. You can look that up, www.citizencommissionagainstcorruption.org, because it is a nonprofit, and citizen is singular, not plural. And a lot of people type in citizens, and then they don't find my website, the organizational website. We have a board of directors. We have people who are already engaged in our administrative capacity. Yesterday, we had Glenn Svoboda. He's our vice president of organizing. And so that's an entity where we hope to go into communities and sit in on court cases, issue reports to keep these judges accountable, to let them know that they are being watched. They're not the litigants.
Very important. Very important.
Yes, it is.
Leon, purchase citizens, and then you could do a redirect.
Yeah.
Just buying the domain name, and then you redirect if somebody makes a mistake. It's like nothing, but it's going to give you that solution on that.
Okay. Well, as long as people can find it, that website is one, by the way, that I produced. I don't consider myself technical in that regard, but after doing so much with my prior websites and paying, so much money to make those occur, like the Parenting Rights Institute, for example, a wonderful website. You should visit that. We have a program, for example, a court strategy program, a self-representation program. That could be very helpful to moms, dads, those who don't know what their lawyers are doing, those who are pro se, those who can't afford a lawyer. It could be a very helpful tool for you in those situations, and maybe save you thousands of dollars in lawyer fees and certainly the horrific events that we're seeing today, the carnage, if you will, that so much of which I addressed here and in yesterday's program as well. So again, tomorrow we are going to feature an attorney in Florida who has a lot to provide us. You can ask her questions when she is here live at 7:30. Friday, we're going to have a video production of our Parent March on Washington, and many of the people who participated. You will hear from them and and take notes on their organizations. These were group leaders from around the country that wanted to have unity. And then we had the pandemic and other things that got in the way, but we want to get back together again. We want to have another event in Washington and make a show of force that we parents will not be deprived of our constitutional rights. And you could take everything from a human being, but don't take away their children. So with that, and they have countless ways of doing it, and they come across making like they're legitimate.
As far as I know, the Seventh Amendment, anything over $20, you can request a trial by jury. I think our kids are worth more than $20.
Well, yeah, and that gets you into a whole different area of research and litigation and precedent, way beyond the scope of what we're dealing here. But I know, and I know I said I'd close this, but I think there's another important point I need to make. I've been at this for many years, some 12 years in the reform movement, some 23 years, over 23 years as an unblemished practicing attorney in civil rights. I won big cases. Among so many, I won a decision in New York Supreme Court that invalidated a $1 billion casino, the Turning Stone Casino. These are it was cases in both federal and state court going on at the same time, and the citations, with me as plaintiff's counsel, are right there. You can't take that away. You can do what you want, discredit me, but you can't take away my accomplishments. And Morley Safer actually came up with a CBS crew to my law office, and I was featured on the Sunday CBS program 60 Minutes, front page of the New York Times. So when I'm speaking here, and even my political background, I was an endorsed candidate for state senate, and I have a lot I'd like to tell you there that went on. You're going to learn a lot here. These are things that could be of great benefit to you and your family. And so with that, I have, again, I want to emphasize, I've met so many people, but unfortunately, many, they go off on tangents. I know they're voodoo lawyers, I'll call them, okay? And they're out there giving legal advice. Like I mentioned, like my secretary, she actually thought, I trained her well, obviously, but and the fact that she got away with it for some 6 years tells you that, there are others. Law practice can be done. And by the time you're discovered, a lot of damage can be done as well. And so this is a lot what we mean by accountability. So be careful what you're looking at out there and who's advising you. If you're pro se, you're in a jungle now. You're in a world of hurt. I'm not discouraging it or giving an opinion one way or another regarding whether you should be pro se or not. I went pro se for a long time. I actually had an attorney friend represent me at different times just to show that whether I was represented or not, the retributions were the same or even more severe. So be careful what you're looking at and reading out there and what you're interpreting, because I've seen people come to me way off on tangents, so badly burned and damaged that some of the harm was irreparable, and I'd hate to see that happen to you. Here is an area that maybe you could avoid that from happening. So again, I want to thank you, all your viewers, listeners. Please, let's get some subscribers here so that we can show the force that we need. And ultimately, YouTube will then monetize us because we do have the sufficient following. I'm going to be at this. I'm going to be at this for a while. I'm not giving in. And you have an advocate here in the political arena, the reform arena, and so forth. And I know there's a lot of people hurting out there. And so we're here to show you're not alone. And so, again, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Rob, Malik, and all of those who have participated, the commentary, the compliments I've gotten. Let's join again tomorrow, 7:30, same time, same channel, where we will feature a Florida attorney. And then Friday with the efforts to maybe have another event in Washington. All right. Good night, and have a nice day.
Good night, Leon. Good night. God bless.